Hey, mushroom growers, Michael here with another segment of the Mushroom Summit. And joining me right now is Alex Winstead, who is the lead farmer and lead mushroom grower, mycologist at Cascadia Mushrooms. So Alex, loved growing up in the Pacific Northwest area, and curiosity developed into growing all sorts of things, mushrooms, not only gourmet, but medicinal mushrooms. And they started in their rented basement in the fall of 2005 and grew from there. Now they have a thriving mushroom business. They sell fresh mushrooms, they sell blocks, and they do some consulting as well as some grow kits as well. Welcome to the summit.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael. Happy to be here.
Now you are a certified organic operation too.
Yeah, we've been certified organic for close to 10 years. Yeah, it was just something I really wanted to do from the get-go, kind of when I got my business sort of off the ground a little bit, because we wanted to get into more wholesale markets. And our local food co-op, really tries to only buy certified organic produce. And so we just thought it was a great thing to instill confidence in our customers about our growing practices, and to sort of holds me to the line of, not cutting corners when I'm purchasing our inputs and things like that, to really just do my homework and make sure that we're staying within the regulations to be certified organic. And as far as how that works for mushrooms, and we do specialty mushrooms that are all wood-loving types, we're allowed to use wood products that come from a certified natural source. So in our case, we're using raw alder sawdust that we source from a sawmill. And pretty much we need an affidavit from the mill that they're not treating the lumber or treating the timber as it goes through the mill, and also that the trees, when they were cut, weren't treated for at least 3 years prior to harvest. That's kind of like the big sort of leniency we get. Other than that, all of our other inputs need to be from a certified organic source. So we use a lot of agricultural byproducts like wheat bran and soybean hulls and whole grain. And so all of those need to be from a certified organic farm. So unlike when you're growing vegetables and other ground crops where you kind of get some leniency with the types of fertilizer that you can spread non-certified organic manure and things like that. They really hold us mushroom growers to the line as far as making sure that all of the substrate inputs are certified organic wherever possible. So it's kind of a neat thing to be part of. We know that we're supporting the certified organic chain all the way up. It's going really well for us.
Very cool. Well, so talk about your vision for the specialty mushrooms in the U.S., because you've been doing this for a while, so you've been around and watched the industry change.
Yeah. When I started out 15 years ago, we're in the Pacific Northwest. We're about 90 miles north of Seattle, so we are kind of in mushroom territory. And even then, back in the early 2000s, people didn't really know what we were bringing to the table. Nobody had heard of lion's mane back then. Very, very few people knew about it. Shiitake has always been, our most popular mushroom and still is today. But now it's people come to the farmer's market and ask us if we have lion's mane, or ask us if we grow maitake or cinnamon caps, or some of these more obscure varieties. So it's been great to watch it grow. Even just on a micro level, the demand at our local food co-op for organic shiitake mushrooms has grown exponentially since we started selling them there. So part of it is just more of us growers getting out and exposure in the community to teach people about mushrooms. So what I am just excited to having seeing it now, but also for the future, is just to have all of these varieties of specialty mushrooms to become way more commonplace, so that at a restaurant you can order your lion's mane mushroom dish and your shiitake, and we still have large button mushroom farms because we need to have commodities and stuff, but that just more people are experimenting with different varieties of mushrooms like they do in a lot of other parts of the world. So I'm just excited to see so many small farms popping up and this happening.
Well, yeah, and I think too is that there's so much, a lot of the resources that go into mushrooms, like the sawdust, is a lot of it's going to waste. Yes, it's being used as animal beddings and stuff, but I mean, it's so much more that could be done with that, with the, with the mushrooms we're growing. And I was looking at we interviewed someone from the button mushroom capital of the world, kind of square, who went through an entire presentation just on how do you grow button mushrooms. And he shared that those guys will get $1.25 a pound for those mushrooms. 40 cents a pound if they get a little bit yellowed and they have to go for commodity grade. And so just seeing the massive price difference, that will be a much better product and something that just so much more flavor profile. And I think healthier for you. I mean, I just did a presentation earlier today with Charles Barber, and he actually runs a company that takes wild mushrooms and domestic mushrooms and turns them into tinctures and powders and all of that, and just how healthy all that is for you. So, really seeing that medicinal side of, something that's so healing for us.
Yeah. And absolutely, the specialty mushrooms do have a lot of, novel properties that make them good for you, but eating button mushrooms is better than not eating mushrooms at all. So
yes.
They're still a highly nutritious food that, is really good for us. And the fact that their price is so low is also reflective of the large volume that they can be grown in for a really low price. The profit margins might not be all that different between specialty mushrooms and button mushrooms, but it is much easier to grow specialty mushrooms on a small scale and be profitable at it. But our cost of the labor and the inputs is way higher than what it does to grow a ton, an actual ton of button mushrooms. It takes a lot less work than it does to grow a ton of shiitake or something else.
Yes, that makes total sense. All right, Alex, I know you've got some slides. You're going to just walk us through your operation. So let's go ahead and share those and you take it away.
Cool. So our farm is called Cascadia Mushrooms, and we're located in Bellingham, Washington, which, as I said earlier, is about 90 miles north of Seattle. So we're in the far Pacific Northwest corner. The reason I got excited about growing mushrooms was I came at it from the perspective of learning about wild mushrooms, mushroom ecology, and especially foraging for wild edible mushrooms.
Okay.
So we got a few photos of just our little mushroom hunting adventures. This is I love this picture because that's the sea right behind my wife, Isabel there. So we're finding these are matsutake mushrooms that we're finding at sea level. We're right above the beach, which is just so cool. That's the Olympic Peninsula out here. And it's just such the mecca for wild mushrooms that, we find these mushrooms in people's front yards and stuff, things that you normally have to go to old growth forest to find. Here's me looking proud with a really nice big matsutake. And just my fascination has really, really blossomed from, watching just learning about ecology and how mushrooms work in a forest ecosystem and how they're, working to break down, big organic material to make soil. It's an amazing process that it was really what drew me into and got excited about the idea of growing mushrooms. So, and capturing them in photos is always a lot of fun. These mushrooms are about, 1.5 inches tall or something like that. Experiment a lot with growing, what for me is an odd type of mushroom. This is the agaricus mushroom, Agaricus bisporus, or the cremini mushroom. We've messed around with growing that in bags the way that we grow everything else, using a mix of sawdust and actually composted shiitake substrate. We actually got some decent crops from them, and they're just another beautiful mushroom to look at. This one here is a bioluminescent mushroom, another one that we just did for fun because we could, and cool. It glows in the dark. So it was really a lot of fun to grow the mycelium, which glows, but then the fruit bodies glow even more. And so you go into the fruiting room, and just once your eyes get adjusted to the dark, you see all these kind of glowing specters all over the place.
That's crazy.
It's a lot of fun. These are not edible though, so but they do look a lot like an oyster mushroom, a deformed oyster mushroom. So kind of came into the mushroom world through the wild mushroom foraging avenue, and fell in love with the growing process. I've always liked working with my hands, and it was kind of like finishing college, and I was either going to continue going to university and become like an academic mycologist, or do something more hands-on. And got a job my last couple of years in college working for Paul Stamets at Fungi Perfecti as like a seasonal, worker, getting their mushroom kits ready to go for the holidays, and then got into the production crew and learning about medicinal mushroom processing, and just totally fell in love with the just the process of growing mushrooms. Is like the mechanics of it is really cool. The tweaking of the environment and everything to make things work right. Plus just, having an endless supply of mushrooms to eat is like always the best thing. Here's an aerial view of what our farm looks like. It's based around two large greenhouse structures. These are 30 by 95 foot hoop houses that have been, specially built out for growing mushrooms.
Okay.
We've got the main building here, which is a pole barn, where I live upstairs with my family. For better or worse, we live right above the mushroom farm. And then down below, we've got our substrate processing area. We've got our lab down there, and our mixing zone in that front carport. This first building here that's kind of butted right up against the main building is the incubation room. And then this one over here is the fruiting room. So three different environments, the three main parts of the process. And we'll kind of just dive in and show you all of those.
Yeah.
So we do grow on raw sawdust. So we get freshly milled red alder sawdust from the local sawmill. Again, one of these, great byproducts of the timber industry that is used to be basically free. Now you have to totally pay out the nose for it, because it's gone in such high demand for not only other farms, berry farmers use it a lot here, and then dairies for animal bedding. But also a lot of these mills now have economizer systems where they burn the sawdust to create electricity on the farm, or to heat their kiln dryers and stuff like that. So it's grown in value quite a bit, but it is still, for the time being, it is readily available and still pretty cheap. We also use grain to supplement the sawdust to get us a more nutritious substrate and get better crops. The primary one that we use is wheat bran for our shiitake. And then we also use some type of whole grain, which is typically barley, just because it's kind of one of the cheaper options for that. Using a whole grain isn't totally necessary. I like it because when you put the dry grain into the substrate, it really helps to balance out the moisture content, because it does absorb a bit of moisture, and it also does provide some nutrition as well. And it also has all the barley is really nice too, because it has the chaff on it also, which is, the mushrooms love that. So the supplement ingredients are all weighed out. We also do add some pearled limestone too, to kind of buffer the pH, and also to add in some extra essential nutrients and all of that. So we mix in this 1 cubic yard soil mixer that was, a veteran of a nursery somewhere in Canada. We can do a 1 yard mix at a time, which for us is about 160 of our 5-pound substrates. We put about, we end up with a full cubic yard in there or more, because we put in almost a yard of sawdust, and then we add in about 70 to 90 pounds of grain material too. Once it's all blended, we add water. We also do a moisture content test for every batch to make sure we're getting that right. And we've been totally burned by that in the past by doing things a little bit more intuitively. And like, there's the old-fashioned squeeze test. Like, if you can squeeze water out of the substrate, it's too wet. If you can squeeze like one drop out, it's just right. We somehow flew by on the seat of our pants using that method for a long time. And then a couple of the varieties that we use really did not like having a too wet substrate or a too dry substrate. So we really started dialing down and just getting a little bit more scientific about our process on a day-to-day basis. Autopiloting through the process, we take a sample, like a 200-gram sample of every yard of sawdust that we mix, microwave it down, do the calculations to make sure that we're getting our moisture content right around 60%. For shiitake, it's that. For some of the others, it's a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But yeah, we really been working on that. Right here, we've got our pneumatic bagging machine attached to the mixer. And so that actually doses out the sawdust in 5-pound increments to fill our bags, which are then folded up nicely and loaded onto these big steel carts that go into our retort or autoclave. So the sterilization process, as many of you probably know, is to kill off any competing bacteria or other fungi that might be present in the sawdust or in the highly nutritious supplements that we put in there. Our target temperature, according to like standard autoclave practices, is about 250 degrees Fahrenheit. We definitely go a little bit under that most of the time. And we do, with our system, we can sterilize at 15 PSI. It's totally not essential. We typically do it a little bit less than that. We found that kind of under sterilizing the substrate has had a lot of good benefits as far as not caramelizing all the sugars that are in both the wood and the bran and everything that goes in there. Even like some trace amount of beneficial bacteria left in the substrate can actually really boost yields and speed up the pace of growth. But it is kind of a risky line to run too.
You just said something very interesting, the beneficial bacteria. So is there any research being done of adding additional strains of like something into the culture to actually make the yield better?
I haven't heard of anything that specific, where you'd actually intentionally add something. But the substrate, I mean, the sawdust is composting. We have it out in the open, so it is fermenting.
Yeah.
So there's all of that stuff in there. And I guess it's more of like an intuitive theory on my part, and what I've talked to with other growers is that, certain strains of mushrooms and certain species of mushrooms prefer a more sterile substrate than others. Some can deal with a bit of bacteria. We can't see it on the macro level.
Yeah.
But it's really hard when you're cooking this quantity of sawdust. It's hard to get a perfect cook. Those outside bags are going to be nicely sterilized. The inside ones, maybe not. I mean, sawdust is a great insulator.
Yeah. And that's why they used it for ice back in the day.
Yeah. And so we leave gaps between the layers on the autoclave cart and everything to allow for better steam penetration. We purge our autoclave to like get some of that air and other, the cool air and other, just to more thoroughly saturate it with steam. But still, it's hard to get a perfect cook. And so sterilization is like an ideal more than a reality.
Mm-hmm.
So after that process where it's been sterilized, we move everything into our HEPA filtered clean room, and that's where we do our inoculation. And so we top spawn everything just by hand. We open up those bags right in front of that HEPA filter, and we're using grain spawn that we grow some of it in house, and we purchase in some of it from other suppliers. And then once the bags are inoculated, they get sealed, and we've got just a overhead impulse sealer that is, it's got like a little foot switch for that, so you don't actually have to touch it or anything. And then it gets shaken just a little bit to mix the spawn through the substrate, and then placed on these rolling racks. And then the substrate's ready to go. At that point, it needs to now it has its incubation period. So this is the incubation room. We've recently, in the past year, we've converted all of our incubation space into these mobile rolling racks, which are the most basic 6-tier NSF shelving with wheels that you can buy at Costco for $100 a set. So they're super like ubiquitous. You can find them anywhere.
Yeah.
But we found this is our old shelving method, and actually you can see one of them off on the right there. This is before we had the room fully converted, but they're stationary shelving that's built into the room with aisles in between each row. And our limiting step here at Cascadia Mushrooms is always the incubation room. Like, we need more incubation space. And so we were at a crossroads of like, well, we can't really build them any higher, and started doing some calculations, talking to other growers. And with these racks, even though they're only 6 tiers, our old shelves were 8 tiers, but we had so much wasted space in the aisles that we could actually almost increase our productivity in the incubation room by 50% by just switching everything over, which was, it was a big purchase and a lot of work to get it all done. But, the alternative of building another incubation room was also something that wasn't really on the table. So we went with this method first, and it's working really well. We had to increase our HVAC system on this room because of the additional heat load of having that many more bags in there. Our room can hold, I think, about 18,000 substrates at a time when it's totally chocked full. Before it was like 12,000. So it increased our output. Yeah, so we had to increase the HVAC. We actually doubled our cooling capacity because that's where we've been really, burned, so to speak, in the past, is in the summertime. Like the Pacific Northwest is super mild. Even in the summertime, it's mild. But if we get, a week of 90-degree weather and you don't have the right tonnage of AC on your incubation room, stuff can go bad really fast, especially when you're growing things like shiitake that have really long incubation periods, up to 12 weeks. And if at any point during that 12-week incubation period, the substrate gets above, 70, 76 degrees sometimes, then, you can really start to see some bad things happen down the line in the fruiting room. So, and actually, before we got the HVAC system upgraded, we had exactly that happen. Just week after week of the blocks would actually look really good coming out of the incubation room. Then you pop them in the fruiting room and almost nothing happens. And so it's just, you expend the labor and the materials every step of the way for the one that actually, is most profitable, which is harvesting and packing.
Yeah.
And just to get, almost nothing. So it just, the amount of money that we lost on those lessons, paid for a new HVAC and paid for new shelving. So it was definitely worth us doing.
So how many tons do you have in that space?
Now it's still only 9 ton to do a, almost 3,000 square foot space.
Okay.
And before that we had 5 ton.
Okay.
So yeah, we stepped it up, and it's working really well. And we ended up getting redundant side-by-side 4.5 ton units. So that way, if one of them goes out, at least we have, one that's in operation. But
so I'm assuming those are ducted mini splits or just big air conditioning units?
No, they're just regular split units. They're heat pumps, actually. So we can actually get heat out of them too for the winter. And you'll see up above in that photo, you can see our tube ducting.
Yep.
And so there's just side by side at the other end of the room. I did not include a picture of it. We have the air handler units on either side of the door leading up to those ducting. My old system was just a single unit up high, and it split into 2 ducts.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, the mini split systems can work well in an incubation space if it's small enough, and then you'll just need a lot of circulation fans to move that air around.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like just the split systems for this application because you get 2 blowers with it. Those blowers are total beasts. We have them kind of hot wired to run on high all the time so that we're constantly circulating air in there.
Gotcha. You must have a pretty good electric bill.
Yeah, it's it is high in the summertime. That's when it's really high. The rest of the year, this room kind of heats itself. And we are introducing a lot of fresh air into this room too, because we try to keep our CO2 levels down at sort of a healthy occupancy level, so that when the workers are in there and when we're in there, we're not getting suffocated by CO2. But also, the mushroom mycelium is going to age faster and better if it's not getting choked out by excess CO2. I've seen some growers where they allow their incubation rooms to get above 3,000 parts per million or something like that. And while it still works, I mean, there's these filtered bags, they're not magic. If the CO2 outside in the room is that high, it's going to be exponentially higher inside of the bag. Mm-hmm. So by running it at a lower CO2 level, we're getting faster incubation times on things like shiitake, just because they need that oxygen to mature.
Yeah. Now, It's a greenhouse structure with double poly on there with air blown between. Do you have additional insulation on there at all?
Yeah, there's not air in between. There is R19 insulation. Um, so it's a layer of poly, and we got the white poly.
Yep.
And then it has actually a layer of the woven ground cloth, acts
Yep.
as like a supporting layer that goes over it. And then on top of that you get the big wide, like 6 foot wide bats of
Yeah.
R19 insulation. You roll that over, and then you do the top covering. So it's like a big blanket.
Very cool.
Yeah. And that's a common building technique for like the Irish mushroom houses. You'll see those a lot. The newer stuff in Pennsylvania looks like that. A lot of the things coming out of the Netherlands, they build these, yeah, just hoop houses with the insulation rolls over it. So, just a really efficient building, cheap to build. You can still technically get away with some building code exemptions in certain areas. If you're in the rural zone or an ag zone, it still counts as an agricultural building. So it was just the right thing for us. And the cost per square foot is really low.
Yeah.
All right, so just to show an example of the incubation process this would be for like a kind of a more fast growing shiitake. You'll see it, at an 8-week incubation period, starting with just the first colonization of the mycelium all the way through the lumping and then the browning phase. And we know when the shiitake blocks look like that one does in the week 8 photo that they're ready to fruit. They've fully browned, and that means that the pins are ready to come out and the mycelium is ready to reproduce. Some strains you get, like a 3782 is a really commonly used shiitake strain. They'll look a lot more like that week 6 photo. They will brown out completely if you allow them. But with some of the stuff that we're using, like the longer incubating things, they definitely get fully brown when they're ready to grow. After the incubation period, for other things like oyster mushrooms and lion's mane, they're only in there for 3 or 4 weeks. They take up a lot less space. Thanks. Again, so everything's on those rolling racks. So they just get rolled over to the fruiting room. And so this is the other greenhouse structure. And that was the other big upshot of changing everything from stationary shelving to these rolling racks, is just the labor saved and the number of handling steps. And we were talking about this at the beginning, just how inefficient some of these North American mushroom farms are. We were, before we changed the rolling racks, I think we were handling each shiitake block like 30 or 40 times, in its life cycle, from the mix, all the way to compost. And now, we've probably removed maybe, 6 or 8 of those handling steps, but it does make a big difference. And so we've got all these rolling racks in our fruiting rooms as well, which used to be stationary shelving. And one of these pictures shows some of the old stationary shelving. But now our fruiting room, since we changed over to these, it's like empty. We have so much more space to grow mushrooms. With the stationary shelving, again, we were just wasting so much space with aisles. When you move stuff in, it doesn't have mushrooms on it for, a week or so. And so they don't need all that space. You can kind of squish everything close together and then give the things that are actively fruiting a bit more space. And, if you're harvesting and stuff, you want to be able to roll things around to make space. It made a ton of sense for us to do this. That being said, if you're just starting out, building stationary shelving is super cheap. If it falls apart, you can just build another one, theoretically, if you have the time. For me, the nice thing about this was it also felt like I was making a more of a long-term investment in these shelves. If everything, kicked the bucket, I could probably turn around and sell all of these on Craigslist if I need to.
Yes. Yeah. I've actually got a local guy that's got a mountain of them that I'm trying to go get. That's got them for sale.
Get them. Yeah, definitely get them. And if you can, one of our restaurant clients was shutting down, and they sold us like 20 of these, and it was a great deal. They're a little bit worse for wear, so they tend to be like the fruiting room ones, because those guys aren't going to last as long, because they do get rusty after a time. But yeah, we actually ended up getting an aftermarket upgrade on the wheels for all of these carts too. So in addition to like purchasing all the carts, we also purchased pallets of these really heavy duty casters for these, so that we can safely move them, with a few 100 pounds of substrate on it.
Yeah.
Without worrying about the wheels, because the wheels that these things come with, especially if you buy the Costco ones, they won't last on a mushroom farm, and it can be dangerous because they can break and fall on somebody.
That's not good. So is it like a 6-inch wheel that you bought there?
It's a 5-inch slip ring caster. Yeah, if people are interested, I can share where I got those too.
Cool.
All right, so let's go ahead and meet some of the mushrooms. So as I've said before, shiitake is our main crop. So we grow the most of these. We do about 800 pounds a week or so when things are going really good. Overall, we're growing about 1,000 pounds a week among all the species, but the vast majority of it is shiitake. We'll do over 1,000 pounds when things are really, really jamming here. So that's a really nice pin set. I think this is the 3782 shiitake. This is like the only shiitake strain I've seen in this densely. It's
like, it looks fabulous.
Yeah, it's like a chia pet mushroom.
Yeah.
And they're actually a challenge to harvest just because there's so many mushrooms on them.
Wow.
This is kind of a ready to harvest crop, but this is the 3790 strain of shiitake that a lot of people are using now. That does have a very long incubation period, but the quality of the mushrooms is just superior to almost any other strain that I've grown in the past. So we kind of make that accommodation for it, that it can take longer in incubation as long as it does this.
Man, they're beautiful.
And they've got that great woolly fuzz on them, and just really nice dense mushroom caps. I guess we've kind of got ourselves into a place with our customers too, where we've really trained them to know what a high quality shiitake looks like. And we tried growing some of the faster growing stuff and passing it off as our like number one grade stuff. People just weren't that into it. Actually, yeah. So we mostly, when we grow the 3782, we mostly do it for like people who are looking for like just petite mushrooms. We'll pack it into bags for CSAs and kind of like the food delivery businesses and things like that. And we do have a bunch of customers who are asking for petites. That strain is great for that because it's fast in incubation. It produces primarily petite mushrooms, and yeah, they're still a great mushroom. It's good quality and good tasting, but they don't have the shelf life of these kind of bigger, denser shiitake.
Yeah. So what room parameters do you like to keep for the shiitakes?
For the fruiting room, we keep it at around 60 degrees as much of the year as we can. In the summer, though, we can run it up quite a bit higher, for as long as it's staying like below 66, 67. We still get good pin sets from them. Sometimes you have to kind of pivot some of your other strategies when you are fruiting at higher temperatures. Like we'll pull the incubated stuff over to the fruiting room and let it sit there for a couple days before we actually open the bag and expose it. So it has, before it gets exposed to all the humidity and the fresh air, it's actually sitting there in that high CO2 environment in the bag, also in the cool conditions. That helps to get like a really nice pin set on them, even when the weather is warm.
Gotcha.
Strains like the 3782, way more forgiving on fruiting temperatures. So they can go up to 70 degrees, no problem.
So then
we generally run a pretty cool fruiting room.
So with humidity then, do you keep it constantly at high, or you cycle humidity and kind of vary it?
We try to keep it high all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So 97% is the ideal target, but it'll drop, if you're using a lot of air conditioning, or right now we've started using heat. So we have a high pressure fogging system for our main humidity source, but then also, we're in there every day, so we'll spray down the floors if we need to. If it's that time of year where we're putting a lot more BTUs into the room for, whether that be cooling or heating, you gotta spray the floors and make sure it stays nice and humid. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's some of my old racking in the fruiting room. So we built it out of galvanized framing, 2x4 type of things. Yeah. So they did last a pretty good long while, but they never felt that safe.
Yeah.
It's hard to make a really sturdy shelf out of those things.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. I did some work with them for a long time.
Yeah. So I was really relieved to get the fruiting room changed over to the rolling racks. That's actually the room we did first. But we harvest, yeah, every day, just to make sure that we're getting all the mushrooms, right at their peak level of quality. And we do sort too, so we're sorting, what we call number ones and what we call petites, and number twos. We don't get a whole bunch of number twos, but that would be like misshapen or mushrooms with brown spots on them, or just ones that got overripe. I know a lot of growers I see, they're using like shears or scissors to cut shiitake. I don't like it. I feel like it kind of pinches the flesh of the mushroom, and you end up with bruising of the stem at an earlier, the longer they sit around. So we use these serrated fisheries knives. They're like a Victorinox, you get them for like $3. They're sharp as heck when they're brand new. There's a learning curve and Band-Aids involved.
Yes, but they're a great little knife.
Yeah, they'll save your butt. Yeah, I feel like they make a cleaner cut on shiitake that doesn't brown as quickly as when you use the shears. So we also grow quite a bit of blue oyster mushroom, at least 100 pounds a week, sometimes more. In the summertime, these things just go crazy for running our fruiting room a little bit warmer. The strain that we're using these days is a wonderful blue oyster strain that we get from Maine Cap and Stem. We get this spawn from them. Same deal with these. They're on the rolling racks. With these though, we expose the side of the block. So we leave the bag on, unlike shiitake where we totally strip the bag away. We cut kind of a big smile shape on the bag, and then we leave that flap of plastic over it for about 4 or 5 days while the pins form, and then we peel it back to let the mushrooms form up. And they just they do really well. Again, high humidity is super essential, especially when you're exposing that much mycelium. You need to keep that humidity above 95% as much as possible in order to get the good thick pin set on that. And we are using a adapted master's mix for our oyster. So a lot of people probably heard that term, and the master's mix is just 50-50 by dry weight, sawdust or wood pellets, and soybean hulls. And we use a blended version of that where we use the alder sawdust, soybean hulls, and our wheat bran and our grain to kind of buffer the moisture. So we end up using a full custom mix on that. It does really well. The soybean hulls thing was like a total revelation for me when I started trying that and hearing about it. Unfortunately, where we are in the Pacific Northwest, soybean hulls are really expensive. They're not as readily available as they are in a lot of the country where soy is grown, especially for organic. Organic soybean hulls are like unicorns of the agricultural byproducts. They're just not that cheap and not that readily available. We also grow what we call the cosmic queen oyster, which is the Pleurotus hybrid species, or shimofuri that they call it in Japan, which is a hybrid of the blue oyster and the king oyster. We've grown king oysters in the past, and we get success sometimes, and just horrible failures other times. We came across this one. People started sharing this strain around quite a bit, and it is just an awesome mushroom strain to add to our offerings. It grows really quickly. It fruits really easily. A lot of the same growing characteristics as the blue oyster, but with the appearance and texture a lot closer to the kings. So it's just been a really great one for us to add to our list. Some people know it as the black pearl or the black oyster is what a lot of people call it. But I thought naming it the queen was a little bit more fitting since it's so close to the king.
Yeah.
We also grow a fair amount of lion's mane. This one's growing in popularity like crazy right now. This is one, I think some celebrities started mentioning that they use lion's mane for health reasons, and now everybody wants it. It's a great mushroom. I've been growing this one since I first started. And at the beginning, when I first went to farmers market with my products and stuff, everybody is like, what the heck is that? It's just
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know, is it real? Is it poisonous? And but man, if they try it and they like it, they come back every week for this stuff, and they get mad at us when we don't have it.
Yeah.
Cinnamon cap's one that we've grown kind of on and off. We've been off of it for a little while. It's another one with a longer incubation period. So
Yeah.
like I said before, the incubation room is always in high demand. And right now we prioritize shiitake over almost everything else. And so because this one has a longer incubation time, it kind of gets cut to make space for other stuff.
Yeah.
Pioppino is another really nice mushroom to grow. Oh yeah, and both of these two are top fruited as opposed to the side fruiting. I guess you can do them both ways, but I've always had most luck doing them top fruiting. Pioppino is another one that's super fast incubating. Doesn't ever produce a whole lot of weight. It's not like a very efficient mushroom, but it's very attractive, and it's a nice thing to add into. We do a lot of like mixed cases for our wholesale customers, and at the farmers market we'll do mixed things. And it's nice to have something cute and little like this to pop into it, and they're delicious too. They got a great texture and flavor. We also grow reishi mushrooms. We grow reishi antlers. We don't actually produce conchs, mostly because it's hard to get the right climate for conch formation. And so we found we can grow the antlers super easily just by letting them fruit up inside the bag in the slightly warmer incubation room where they like to be. And we allow them just to kind of fill up all that headspace in the bag, cut the top off, and harvest them. And these have been a great addition for us. We sell them in a kind of 1 ounce retail package, but we also do quite a bit of wholesale of these days. Being that we're certified organic, grown in the U.S., they're in high demand from people who are tired of sourcing stuff from China for that. And they're just, such a beautiful mushroom. One of my favorite mushrooms for sure.
Stunning.
All right, so just a little bit about where the kind of last stage of the process is, selling it to make money to keep the business going and to feed everybody. We do most of our sales are wholesale. We do just one farmer's market these days. So we do a lot of 5-pound boxes of shiitake, and we deliver them locally, but we also distribute through a farmer cooperative, a food hub model here. So we can, because we're kind of up in the hinterlands in Washington. There's Bellingham, but then way to the south of us is Seattle. And so instead of us driving down there a couple times a week, we work with our food hub, and we can go. They have an online platform for chefs and food businesses to order from. They can, we put exactly what we have available. They send us the order. We go drop it off in the big walk-in cooler on a pallet like this, and then they do all the distribution out to restaurants and things in the, outside of our immediate local area. It's been a great way for us to expand our distribution reach without expending a whole bunch of resources, getting a second truck, basically paying somebody almost full time to just be a driver. It just creates a lot of efficiency, where there's just fewer trucks on the road, more like aggregation, and it's great because we actually are co-owners of this cooperative. So we also get a voice in how decisions get made, and the direction of the organization. So it's great to work with other farmers, not just mushroom farmers, but like pooling all of our stuff together to make us have like a bigger, stronger offering from our little neck of the woods up here. We also do sell direct at farmers market. So we do our local Bellingham farmers market. It's 12 months a year now. And we've been doing that from the very beginning. That was my first sales outlet when I started 15 years ago. And then we have our spent substrate. So this is also, something that always needs to be considered when growing mushrooms, is that you end up with a bunch of stuff at the end. And we do compost some of it on site and do compost sales, but we also have partnered with another local farmer bless his heart, every week he shows up with his farm truck and loads up the back of it with about 4 cubic yards worth of spent mushroom blocks and takes them out and composts them on his property and then uses it as fertility on his farm.
And how long does it take for a mushroom block to compost?
If you're actively composting it, it can be pretty quick, 4 to 6 weeks. You get a pretty hot pile. He's also mixing in hay and manure and everything into his. So he gets he gets it really cooking and turns it. But if you have like a, mechanically aerated pile, yeah, I'd say 6 weeks, you can turn around a pile like this. But we have a pretty low tech cold compost system in the middle of a little field.
Yeah.
And we end up using a lot of it here on our property, and a few diehard customers who will come out and scoop it themselves in their wheelbarrow and things like that. But it is sort of the final product of mushroom growing and of the mushroom life cycle. So it's a good thing to take into consideration and not to just treat it as garbage. We love the relationship we have with our farmer who comes and picks it up, because he's saving us a ton of time as far as removing it from the bags, taking it, transporting it, and everything. All we have to do is just clean up after him when he leaves. In the future, I'd love to have more time to, set up proper composting bins and create a whole nother product line of, finished mushroom compost, because people really want it. They don't want it all year, but every March through June, our phone's ringing off the hook with compost calls. And so we do some sales here on the farm, but it could be a way bigger thing if we had it a little bit more organized. But it takes investment, it takes labor, it takes time. And that's kind of the wrap up for me. And if anybody needs to get in touch with me, cascadiamushrooms.com is our website. And I think Michael will put up direct contact info too, so people can get a hold of me if they have any inquiries about consultation or need resources for spawn or other equipment or supplies. I'm happy to help.
Well, Alex, that was fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing that. They gave us a really good overview of I would say you're a larger operation in the world of the small scale mushroom farms. So it's really good to see that. Love the greenhouses and how you kind of built those and kind of knowing the technical details. Now that I have my own mushroom house, I'm really starting to think about that kind of stuff. So it's good to see exactly how you've got that. So yeah, thank you again so much for coming on and sharing this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.